Hi, welcome to Bastards of History, where we discuss some of the lesser-known bad guys of history while in a bar. We explore each of these dubious and ethically challenged characters in 20 minutes or less, and of course, at the end, I'll give you our ranking for each historical figure on the scale of bastardness. For today's Bastard of History, we are venturing into Eastern Europe, specifically the spooky backwoods near Transylvania, for the life of Vlad the Impaler. So, let's make a drink and get started. Vlad III, also known as Vlad Dracula. Oh, why do I get the feeling this guy is a bloodthirsty one? Or, more famously, Vlad the Impaler was born into a respected family in Segesvar, which is a city in modern-day Romania. Due to the timing and geography, we are a little hazy on his early life. Like, for instance, we don't know for sure what year he was born in. It was either 1428 or 1431, and we are unclear on who his first wife was. Nevertheless, we do know that Vlad the Impaler's family had earned the name Dracul, which is associated with the Order of the Dragon. In fact, the term Dracula is actually the genitive form of the name Dracul. So, Dracula sort of means of the house of Dracul, or the dragon. Nowadays in Romania, instead of dragon, Dracul means devil, and it looks like our man Vlad is a big part of the switch in the meaning. His family received this moniker Dracul due to their efforts at stopping the Ottoman Empire from advancing into Europe. His dad seized Wallachia, which was sort of like a state that preceded the country of Romania. Because of this, the Ottoman Sultan demanded a sign of loyalty from Vlad's dad, who was also named Vlad. And so, little Vlad went down to Gallipoli with Big Vlad, where they were imprisoned. Dad Vlad was released after a year, but son Vlad remained in prison with his brother in Ottoman custody. Some sources suggest that Vlad and his brother were not treated particularly well, and I'm inclined to believe those sources. There is additional speculation that Vlad and his brother were subjected to non-consensual insertions into their rear ends. If this was true, then obviously that's horrible, and it would also explain his fascination with impalement later on. Honestly, it's an interesting theory, but I don't know how reliable it really is. Vlad's dad, also named Vlad, was genuinely concerned that his sons would be slaughtered by the Ottomans, lending credibility to the theory that their captivity was at the very least not very fun. But they were eventually released and allowed to return to Wallachia. Vlad's dad then died, and Vlad III used an Ottoman army, you know, the guys who mistreated him for so long? Yeah, he used them to try to take over control of Wallachia. But Vlad was then forced to flee back to the Ottoman Empire, which had to be quite a mindfuck for the very young man. So, for those of you patiently waiting for the gruesome details, here's the quick rundown on Vlad the Impaler's early life. Born Vlad and of a Vlad. Don't even know which year exactly. He was held hostage by the Ottomans and possibly violated. Then, after attempting to take control of his hometown, he was forced to flee back to the Ottomans yet again. It's a pretty intense start to life in a pretty volatile part of the world. So, how did Vlad III, also known as Vlad Dracula, come to also be known as Vlad the Impaler and therefore become one of our bastards of history? Well, let's just say he played for high stakes. Literally. By 1456, when Vlad the Impaler was nearing 30 years of age, he went to Hungary, and then return to Wallachia with Hungarian supporters and attempt to take back his family birthright. So this is now a second time where he has used an external source of support to seize control of his hometown. This time, he succeeded and did not have to flee into exile. What was his first order of business? A purge, naturally. Vlad executed hundreds, if not thousands, of his own people whom he felt were not aligned with him. He then took their shit for himself or for his friends. In the year 1457, we have what might be Vlad's first foray into the form of execution called impalement. During a civil war, Vlad took advantage of the confusion and broke into Transylvania, where he plundered villages and impaled tons of men, women, and children. So, what is impalement? I'll try to be delicate. It is a form of execution with a few variations. Vlad the Impaler specifically preferred to use large wooden stakes, but with blunted or rounded ends. This was done by design, as sharper edges might damage internal organs and bring about a quicker end. The stake would be forcibly inserted into the victim's rear end and shoved deep into their body. Then they would be hoisted up so that they and the stake would be vertical, and gravity would slowly cause the body to slide down the stake, eventually leading it to exit out at the shoulder or the neck. It was a horrible way to die, probably in the top 5 worst ways to go. And it was brutal and agonizing, and often took days for people to pass away. The survival rate was literally 0. There are no accounts of people surviving this form of execution. Vlad the Impaler specifically chose this gruesome and torturous form of execution due to his cruel nature and his desire to send a shocking message to those who might oppose him. A few years later, during another conflict with the Saxons, Vlad retaliated by going after his own local Saxon merchants, stealing all of their shit and then impaling them alive. There were about 41 victims in this case, but Vlad was not done impaling. He then went and found another 300 boys and impaled them or burned them alive. This is from an eyewitness account at the time. Vlad then invaded southern Transylvania, where he then ordered the impalement of all men and women that he captured. Vlad was far from finished, though. He basically told the Ottoman Sultan to go fuck himself, and when he waited for the guy to be distracted, he then invaded the Ottoman Empire, which is bold as fuck when you consider Vlad is a regional ruler with a very modest army, going up against what was one of the strongest and wealthiest empires to have ever existed. And Vlad the Impaler was brutal. He destroyed the villages along the Danube River. And this isn't just a second-hand account or a Turkish source. No, he wrote by his own hand to his own people that he had nearly 24,000 Turks and Bulgarians killed at his own order. The Ottoman Sultan was pissed, and he raised a massive army that was allegedly one of the biggest ever assembled just to deal with this hellacious piece of shit. The Ottoman army was led by the Sultan himself, and it moved on Vlad's position. Vlad knew that he was hopelessly outnumbered and presumably had no chance, so he made a retreat back towards Wallachia. But he went scorched earth all along the way, rounding up innocent villagers and impaling them alive. He left them there for the Ottoman army to find, and they described the scene like it was a forest of impaled. The Ottoman army and the Sultan himself were completely taken aback by the scale of this cruelty as they saw thousands of these victims slowly dying. Eyewitness accounts state that about 20,000 were impaled, including men, women, and children. And not just children, infants were impaled to their own mothers. This grotesque scene is gut-wrenching to imagine, but was also horrifying to witness. The Ottoman army was so put off by this ostentatious display of cruelty and depravity that they eventually turned around and left. That's right. As disgustingly cruel as this act was, it did what Vlad the Impaler wanted. It freaked out the Ottomans, while also instilling in them a dark sense of respect for this deranged psychopath. Nevertheless, Vlad the Impaler ended up back in prison, this time in Hungary. I mean, this guy's story is one of captivity followed by ruthless oppression, rinse and repeat. And while the so-called basis for imprisoning Vlad was suspect as shit, he still ended up locked up for like 14 years, during which we again have little information. Vlad the Impaler was eventually released back into the world again, and he bought a house that became known as the Dracula House in a city called Pets, which is in southern Hungary. It's quite likely that this residence gave inspiration to Nosferatu's house later on. So, here is our man Vlad the Impaler, who has been imprisoned by both Muslim and Christian forces, and has probably spent the majority of his life either in captivity or exile. So now, he has a nice house with a generous stipend. You'd think he'd learn to realize he had kind of gotten away with one or two horrific atrocities. Maybe now's the time to sit back and enjoy the extra lease on life he's received. No, Vlad the Impaler is not done. Vlad the Impaler's ferocious reputation led to him being called out of retirement by the Christian kingdom, who deployed Vlad once more to fight the Ottomans, this time in Bosnia, and he had success, taking territory and once again impaling captured Turkish soldiers and massacring civilians. He literally destroyed several towns. But Vlad the Impaler had finally gone too far. Karma gave him quite a head start, but she eventually caught him. The Ottomans cornered his smaller army and destroyed it, including him. Vlad the Impaler, the bloodthirsty fucker obsessed with rear penetration, died fighting. I'll give him that. He died fighting. And to keep with the trend of uncertainty in his life, to this day, we are unclear on his burial site. That's right, even if you wanted to, you cannot desecrate his grave, because we have no idea where it actually is. So, what to make of Vlad the Impaler's reputation for cruelty? Well, while we have a lot of uncertainty in other areas of his life, his brutality and fetish for impalement are not up for debate. What do I mean by that? Well, these claims of immense brutality don't come from like one guy, or even one group of people. No, we have Germanic sources of his brutality, along with Slavic sources alleging similar atrocities, along with Turkish eyewitness accounts indicating the same type of cruelty, along with what Vlad the Impaler literally wrote in his own hand about doing to his people. Vlad the Impaler got his name for a reason, and the sources are strikingly detailed and credible. And to that point, there are actually some Romanian voices that try to spin Vlad the Impaler into a twisted force for good, trying to turn him into a nationalistic defender of Christianity against Islamic invaders. But here's the thing. Those voices also admit and accept that he was brutal and cruel, though they argue that this was done to defend Europe from the Ottomans, not out of personal desire. There's even a theory that Vlad the Impaler suffered from a rare condition called hemolacria, which may have caused his tears to be partially comprised of blood. I'm not one for cartoonish stereotypes, but sure, why not? So yeah, surprise, surprise, Vlad the Impaler had thousands of people impaled. He was also a brazen and ballsy fuck who bit off more than he could chew on multiple occasions. And no, he didn't learn from this. He just kept going, inflicting as much brutality as he possibly could, and he ultimately got himself killed. I get it. He grew up in a difficult area at a tough time, and it's possible he was abused while in Turkish captivity. But there is no excuse for the immense suffering he inflicted upon so many. On the one hand, his legacy spawned a fascinating mythology of Dracula and vampires. That's right, you females gushing over the Twilight series should be advised that the premise is based on a disgustingly disturbed individual who was not even handsome. And I think this is interesting, because those of us in the West had plenty of examples for autocrats who were cruel and vicious, yet our literature turns to Transylvania for inspiration in this regard. I knew a guy named Adam who traveled all around the world teaching English, and he spent some time in Romania. To be clear, he thought it was a lovely place with good people, and he encouraged others to travel there. But he also told me to my face, quote, "Transylvania is a spooky place." And so I think the remoteness and exotic nature of this landscape really inspired the Dracula mythology of a vicious and ruthless autocrat sucking the blood out of his people. And we have since taken that a ton of different directions. And that's cool, because it's fiction. But Vlad the Impaler was not fiction. He and his atrocities were very real. And taking as objective a view as I can, he's still very easy to judge. On the scale of bastardness, Vlad the Impaler is a full-blown psychopathic mass murderer, among the absolute worst of the worst bastards of history. If you are on crack and you don't agree with my rating, go down to the comment section and tell me why I'm wrong. And while you're there, hit the like button and subscribe so that we can keep making these. Want us to cover a specific bastard of history? Go down to the comment section and let us know. Until next time, keep calm, drink on, and for the love of God, do not be a bastard like Vlad the Impaler.